Hey everyone, good morning. How are you? All right, I see a lot of green faces here, some new people. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Hey Emily, thanks for coming. Guys, we're gonna get started. I wanna get started. Today we're gonna talk, well, it's gonna be a mix, a hybrid of marketing and technology. I'm gonna give you one piece of technology and then we're gonna go through the reasons why these technologies so powerful, especially for the marketing, because one of the things that we're noticing now is that there is a multitude of people going online, trying to do business online and trying to figure ways to make it work online. The reality is that making it work online is a couple of steps, right? And the first one is to be cognizant of who your customer is. The next one is what is the journey you want to take that customer through. So today I want to give you a different approach to this, right? Something that I've been working on for a while. And yesterday when Renee and I were debating how to present this, I said, well, this may be the right time for us to talk a little bit about customer journey in relation to the technology that we want to talk about, right? So today, it's really about knowledge, all right? What we will be talking about is how do you capture the knowledge that is going to impact how you communicate with your customers, right? And by your customers, it is also anyone who would have the chance to be impacted by the service that you're providing, right? I think over the last couple of months, we have been exposed to different ways of reacting to information, right? I think there's a lot of Zoom calls happening, a lot of online seminars. So the way that we receive that information is and that knowledge is also changing. So we have to be cognizant of that process, right? In order also to influence how our customers will react to our own message down the road. So what I want to talk about before we even talk about technology, right? I want to talk about meta-learning, right? Meta-learning is the process by which learners become aware of what is happening when they learn, okay? So the more you learn about a topic, the more ingrained that knowledge becomes. So your perception about the subject, your perception about how things work, they change, right? If the best example I have is a magician, right? A magician can make something happen in front of your eyes that you do not recognize. Your mental patterns are not wired for that. But when you learn that trick, it's like, of course, right? And the same thing happens for everything. All right, so meta-learning is when you put yourself in a position to observe what's happening with your own learning, okay? You're observing what's happening, the reactions that are happening with your customers or with the people you're trading with, okay? And you go one step back, all right? And in that process of going one step back, what you're really doing is you're giving yourself a chance to observe yourself in that situation and then be able to create an outcome in line with what you want, okay? This is very, very, very important because anyone today who has the ability to do anything online has to pay attention to what's happening with their customers, right? And how their customers are reacting to what's happening. There are tons of different ways to execute that process as you go, right? But knowing about meta-learning is what will give you the basic platform for you to look up and say, okay, how do I ensure that what I want this process to do actually happens, okay? Another reason why this is important is because our span of attention has decreased tremendously, right? In many cases, we are having like massive influence from many different sides on everything that's happening, right? The way I like to put is, if you're watching the news, you will get lost in 5 minutes, right? So news were supposed to be informative. Today, they're just another means to capture your attention either for or away from something. So the more you understand the process that is happening inside of your mind when you're learning, when you're acquiring that knowledge, the more powerful your pitch to your customers will become. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay, good. Exactly. Thank you. All right. So, how do we apply this, right? What is the practical application of this thing that I'm talking about? Well, let me try and, yeah, all right. So, we talk a lot about the customer journey, right? So, in the reinvention process, what you do is you identify, you first understand where you are. Then you identify something you're very passionate about. I don't have to tell you that this that I'm doing right now is the one thing I'm the most passionate about. Then what you do is you identify how that passion can be turned into a business or a side hustle. Then you identify your niche, your tribe, and your avatar. Okay, then you go on to understand your offer, the value that you're putting together, and then you have a business, right? I'm oversimplifying, but that is really the way it is. But in the middle of that process, the sooner you define that avatar, and then you have to define the value, okay, the offer that you're going to be making, you have to think about the customer journey, right? What is the customer journey? Well, if you've been around for a while, you know that a lot of the focus that we have with customers is how do you take them from a painful state to a pleased state? Okay, how do you take your customers from a situation where they need something and you're providing that something? How do we take the customers from a situation where they have a problem, that problem is solved, right? That is the customer journey. But one of the things that we usually don't talk about is that customer journey is a learning journey, okay? And it's a learning journey for you, and it's a learning journey for the customer. So when we are talking about taking the customer from a painful state to a pleased state before it's happening, right? You are also taking that path of how much do I need to learn about the customer needs, right? And that's very basic, but also how can I ensure that through that process, the customer is also able to articulate their needs, all right? So this is the learning journey that we need to consider, right? And that learning journey is really impactful, right? If you look at how businesses are selling their products and services today, the vast majority of them, they're not pitching it commercially anymore, okay? The reason for that is that over the years, okay, so in the late 40s, early 50s, a lot of people in Madison Avenue, they started coming up with ideas on how to sell products and services for us, right? So they were very, very focused on, okay, what are the words that will trigger a certain behavior from people? At that time, it was really radio, TV was starting, and then, yeah, the movies, right? But really it was about the power of words. So they would trick you into buying something, a product or a service, right? Over the years, the usage of that, right, the copy, has been amplified to a degree that a lot of us have become very cognizant of when something is happening, right? And if we can see the true value, then it's fine, right? You buy that thing that you wanted, but a lot of people become resistant merely because, okay, so you're trying to sell me something, as if selling was something bad, when it's not, right? Selling is the blood of any businesses, right? Any business needs to sell, right? And when people are resistant, well, they're closing themselves to the opportunity of selling, but at the same time, they're not being aware of the process that goes when you're selling something. So here is where it becomes tricky, because when we need to take our customers through the learning journey today, the vast majority of the people you will talk to, they're resistant, right? So they need, it's not that they don't need to acquire what you're there to sell, but they're resistant. So you need to figure out a way, and that way is what I call the learning journey, right? The most successful people, entrepreneurs today, what they're doing is they're teaching their customers their process before they're actually selling anything, okay? How do you do that on a scale, right? So how do you do that in a way that it will allow you to actually build that that scale that is needed? The first thing is to recognize that your customer has a painful situation, all right? But how can you do that? And I'm sorry, these slides, they keep on moving like a lot. So you need to recognize that your customers have a pain to be addressed. And the first thing for you to do that is actually to capture data, right? So capturing that data may happen in various different forms, okay? I'm gonna teach you one today, right? That is the most simple one, but it's definitely not the only one, okay? The way to capture that data is you can go, let's say, if you want to run ads on Facebook, right? The first 6 days you're running the ads, you're not running the ads to sell anything. That's a misconception that people have. If you're running ads anywhere, right, where you can collect data as a result of that, the first 6 to 10 days, you're just running those to capture, you're buying that data, right? You're buying the visibility of what's happening. So capturing that data is a critical step on this, okay? Now, obviously, you need to have a plan for that. So when we are talking about how do I capture the data, you need to have means to an end, right? And the means to an end is that you need to review that data as a follow-up. So you need to start with an expectation. Okay, what I will see here is the way that my customers break down in age groups, gender, interests, and some of these things, right? But for you to be able to review that data, your starting point needs to consider what you're looking for, okay? So in that learning journey, this is the first step, right? How do you assess what exactly are the needs? A great way to do that is actually when I got a question, one of my customers earlier today, he asked me, so how do I generate a lot of traffic for this thing that I'm trying to put together? Well, you need to figure out where the people are hanging out, right? Because if you see people hanging out around a particular subject, what you're going to do is you're going to hang out there as well. You're going to pay attention to the questions that are being asked. You're going to understand the nuances of what is being talked about. You're going to build an opinion that may be for it, meaning support what other people are saying, or against it, right? If what they're saying is not what you mean, because in anything that we do, there will be two sides to whatever topic is being raised. So what you need to consider is then how do you ensure that journey, okay, happens in their mind, but it happens in your mind before, so you prepare for it as well. So step number one, capture that data. So you can go into Reddit, you can go into Facebook, right? Facebook is great for that. The Facebook groups gives you a lot of data, right? You can go to Quora. You can go to all these different places that will allow you to capture that data. And then you're going to review it. And then you're going to prepare that customer journey. Now, the best way for you to prepare that customer journey is actually to identify your own pool of customers, right? Is to understand, okay, who are the people based on your avatar, the perfect customer, that you're able to communicate with them, okay? Now, where it gets tricky is if you don't know what that journey is going to lead your customer into just yet, right? So you're going to have to launch and see, okay, this is what I'm thinking about doing, right? There are many marketplaces today online where people will essentially launch things, capture data, review that data, and they will redo the journey, okay? What does that mean? It means that your customer is there and you're constantly evolving that customer journey. Why is that? Because everything on the internet today is very easy to copy. It's very easy to copy something that someone else is doing. I mean, the amount of copycats out there is crazy, and the amount of knowledge being created to be ahead of the curve, it's also massive as well. So in order to build that value proposition that is very, to the point, you need to redo that journey once in a while, okay? In that case, and what I'm going to show you today is you ask the question directly, right? There are many tools that can do that for you. Our tool of choice, and simply because if you were here last week, you heard about automations, right? So one of the things that we do with this tool that we use is we automate a lot of the processes out of it, right? And a lot of the things that we do in reinvention, we use this particular tool to build that framework, right? In the past, you would go to a workshop and someone would give you a piece of paper, right? And then you would write things down and you would reflect on them and so on. But today, we're so wired to think screens and computers and so on that can actually cause people to freeze, right? When they're sitting there with a piece of paper, they literally don't know what to do. So we said, okay, why don't we have the two ways of doing this? Why don't we have this in, where we can capture that information electronically, we can store that information for you. You're going to have that stored as well, right? And then it allows us to do something that very few people, very few coaches and consultants, they think about doing, which is to analyze the data that we're capturing, right? So what I want to show you, right, and I'm going to try, again, like with automations, this is being done live, and there is a possibility that we're going to fail on this. I just want to make that very clear, okay? We will, yeah, when it's live, it's complicated, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to say, we'll teach you how to build a form and what are some of the tricky things to use that form for. Meaning, why would we use that form in that same way? Remember, the usage of forms has been around for the last, 20 years probably on the internet, right? Surveymonkey has been there. You have the Mentimeter tool, which is fantastic, and it allows us to do a bunch of different things. But I think most of us are familiar with Google Docs, right, and the G Suite and Google Forms, right? A couple of things about that. Before, and this is to everyone, before you jump into the tool, any tool, you need to understand what you're trying to accomplish with that particular tool. Okay, because otherwise, in our case, we test the tools because we want to see, okay, usability, do we like it or not, will our customers enjoy? They may or may not become part of our stack, right? I think we wrote a few weeks ago in one of our weekly emails that we like Spoke, right? Spoke is amazing. We like Theo. Theo is amazing, right? But before we got to these tools, we had to test out a bunch of things so that you don't have to, right? So that's part of our value proposition, that when we sit down and we're talking about your business, we have a stack of tools that we've looked into and we can say, okay, this is what we use, right? The only thing we're affiliated with, by the way, is ClickFunnels. Everything else we're not, and that's a matter of principles, right? But ClickFunnels is a big part of the journey for many of you. So we became really affiliated with them because of that. Now, that being said, what I want to make sure is that you understand that before you use the tool, okay, that you know what you're going to use that for. What does it mean, right? What is the outcome that you want to get out of the questions you're asking, okay? Very much as with reflection that we talked about a few weeks ago, right? When you're reflecting about something, you're creating answers in your mind that are going to help you take action in a certain direction. Okay, this exercise of putting something out there where you want to collect feedback needs to be thought through. Also because there's a lot of people doing the same. So what is the value that you're going to give out when people answer your questions, right? So what we decided to do is we're going to try a live exercise with you guys, okay, and see how does that work. So that's what I said. It's live. It may work and it may not work, but we do believe that it's going to be helpful for you to learn a thing or two about this. So just give me one quick second here because I need to pick this up live. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. So if you have worked with Google Docs before, can you give me a thumbs up? Nobody has worked with Google Forms before. Okay. We have some thumbs up and some thumbs down. Okay, great. So Google Forms, what it allows you to do is to build a front end, okay, for you to be able to capture data in whichever format you want. Okay, so what does that mean? I'm going to show you. So this thing here is a form that we've created for this meeting. All right. So what does it contain? And I'm sorry it's a little bit slow. The browser here is not as fast as we would like. Okay. So here we're talking about, what did you like it? Okay. Not very much, very much. How relevant and helpful is the content? Okay. We would love to know 1 or 2 takeaways. How satisfied are you with the logistics of the event? Additional feedback on the logistics, if any. What content you would like to cover in the upcoming sessions. We would like to share your testimonial. Please write it down, name, blah, blah, blah. So what is this? So we are asking really, do you like this? Don't you like this? But we can ask this like to a lot of people in one go, right? Now, one of the things that we usually do is we created this, okay? And we're doing, from 1 to 5. you could do, depending on what it is that you want to do, right? There are theories behind this on customer satisfaction. Are you likely to promote? Are you less likely to promote? In the end of the day, you have to think, what is the output that you want to get out of this particular form or questions that you're asking. Does that make sense? Yeah. So how do you build it? Okay. If you have Google Forms, it's crazy easy, right? And that's also one of the dangers of this thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna tweak a few things here, just so you know, right? And again, we're doing this live. I'm taking risks here. So the way to do it is you have to create something new, right? I'm not going to do that because that was not possible in the testing that was done. Okay, and then you have your set of questions that you've taught. So the first thing that you need to think is this, right? You're going to have to add a module in there, right? So let's say I'm going to add something. Okay. So I just did. Can you see that? Clap your hands if you do, please. Can you see this? Awesome. Love it. Okay, so the question is what you want to ask. Okay? So because I thought about that, so what is what, sorry, it's a little bit slower. What attracted you to this one event? Okay, so if you ask a question like that, a what question is essentially something where you want to have an answer, right? Unless you want to gauge the answers, in which case you're giving options. Okay, so I'm gonna lean out here and say, yeah, I would like to parse this data. I would like to understand the data that I'm getting, right? So, and because I think this meeting is so cool, technology, right? Or even better, the platform. Okay. Then I'm gonna add another one, right? Because I want to parse this. I wanna take a look. So this is going to be, you know what? The knowledge that I'm getting, all right? Or I could say the presenter. And I could add another really quickly, right? So what am I doing here? So if I know that I'm going to be able to pin down to a few attributes, the easiest way is to do it like that, right? If I want to select one out of many, that's how I would do it. But I could also do something, which is, what I want to do is, I want to come here, right, and change this to checkboxes. Okay? In which case, I already have it done, all right? But then you can mark more than one. What is the difference between these two, right? If I want to rank what is the most important thing for people, right? I'm going to use only one selection. If I want to rank several attributes and see what gets selected, I'm gonna do checkboxes, right? I could do drop downs and so on, right? Another thing for you to be cognizant about is that you will have, in a way, to come here and then identify, okay, so how do you like this thing? How satisfied are you with this event, right? And here's from 1 to 5. But really, what I would like to do is I would like to build something that gives me a Net Promoter Score. For those of you who are not familiar with the Net Promoter Score, is just a way for you to measure how how much your customers like what you're doing, right? So 9s and 10s, they are supporters. 7 and 8s, they're neutral, and anywhere between 1 and 6, they don't like whatever it is that you're doing. The natural number here, it goes out, it's 5, so we can put it all the way to 10, okay, on a scale. Sorry, this is going slower than I thought. This is like when you're playing live on TV, right? It's cool until something breaks. Yeah, I know. I know. All right. So, hate and love. Okay? So there you go. Now, I have this, right? And I want to send it, right? I want to send it to you guys so that you can actually answer it right now, live, in your phones, if that's what you want, in your computers, if that's what you want. So I want to try this live thing. So when you send, there are a couple of things that you have to be cognizant about, right? We're not going to touch too much on them. This is not a class, right? This is something for us to enjoy together. So I'm going to shorten the link and I'm going to copy, right? So I just did copy. And what I want to do is, let's see if that's going to work. What I want to do is send it on chat. All right, guys. Now, if you go to your chats, on the chat, I sent a link, right? This is the link for this particular sub. If you can access, can you please clap your hands? Just for me to know if some of you are actually able to access it, because then from that we have a continuation for this exercise. Can you access it in the chat? You can't. Oh. Okay. Yeah, that was something that we couldn't do. All right, so here, you can't click the link. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Later today, we're going to send an email to the Theo family and in our mailing list that includes this link. And then what we're going to do is we're going to wait for you to respond back. And then what we're going to do is we're going to basically give you a rundown over a video of what happens after you've done this process. So there is a follow-up to this. This is relatively simple, right? So let me just come here and see if there's one of mine that I can use. Just hang on one quick second, guys. This is live from California. Just getting you another one, copy it. this is one other one that we have here. Okay, and what we do with that is you capture the responses, right? If you see here, 8 responses. Okay, and you have the different voices and dates and so on. Okay, whether people liked or not this particular event, we had comments and so on, right? What does it do? It allows us to go better, to be better at something that we are trying to do. Okay? So with that, I'm going to park this here. We're going to send you this later today on our group email, okay, so that you can respond. And we're going to make it a point from time to time in sharing this so they can also feedback to us, right? But the power of this thing is that you're able to really capture a lot of information from your customer in one go, right? So with that, what I want is to go through this slide and then ask me anything. So does anybody have any questions?
Can you hear me?
Anybody, any questions, guys?
Hello, hello.
All right, so there you go. Paco, oh, Francis?
Yes. Hello.
Francis, hang on one second. I'm gonna do something different.
Ah, I'm at the stage.
All right, Francis, what's your question?
Oh, thank you for inviting me to the stage. I'm very honored. The question is, what is the difference between the Google form and Surveymonkey?
Francis, can you hear me?
Hello.
We can't hear you.
I can
You
hear.
have public mic.
We don't hear.
All right, Francis, say again.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear now.
Super. The question is, what is the difference between Google Forms and Surveymonkey?
It's just a different technology, right? What SurveyMonkey was kind of the platform that started all this, and the reality is that it's a good platform, but it ran behind on a couple of things. First, the agility. I mean, even though this is a super slow browser, right? We were able to do it relatively quickly, and SurveyMonkey has its limitations. The other thing is, if you have G Suite, Google Docs is free, right? I don't think even you can. I don't even think you can access it outside of G Suite, right? So that is one. The one that a lot of geeks are using today is called Typeform, right? What Typeform does, it enables you to connect a lot of things from that back end of the questioning into automations. So for example, if I have a question for 100 people, and based on the sequence of the answers that you have, you're going to get an email about something, about an offer, about some marketing thing, right? Typeform allows you to do that easier than other platforms. Google Forms allows you to do that directly with Google Mail as well, but it's not as sophisticated. So it's really, I would say SurveyMonkey is kind of level one. I would say that Google Forms and Microsoft Forms are level 2, and then Typeforms and Mentimeter are level 3. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes, it does. And
Okay.
another question. So, I mean, the whole idea of this is when you prepare the customer journey, which is based on the data that you capture, but still you haven't tested out. The this type of tools will help you to redo the customer journey once you have tested out and see how the avatar reacts. It's in a nutshell. That's correct, or?
Yes, that is perfect. I think that's a perfect description. What you're doing here is you're saying, okay, your avatar says yes to something that you're offering, right? Then he gets it, and the feedback after he gets it is not as good, right? So it could be two things. It could be that that's not really the interest of the avatar, and the second thing that it could be this is something where the delivery was not optimal, right? And that's fine. When you capture that data, you're basically circling back and saying, okay, this is what I need to fix, right? I think the you and I had this conversation yesterday. What are we trying to accomplish is usually the first thing for anyone to assess, right? And the reality is that we usually don't think too much about that beforehand. So when you're done, then you also forget about it, right? So if your starting point is, you know what, I want to capture information to understand the lay of the land here. How many people would be interested in this thing or that thing? That is done. You move forward. Then you capture information to say, okay, is this being worthwhile, right? And in this process, I think there's something I haven't mentioned that yet. And for the people on the video afterwards, right? I really want to emphasize that one of the things that we can use this for, right, is to ask for testimonials. Testimonials are the way to help people through their journey in their minds before you're actually doing any of this for real. So when you're doing this this sort of collecting data, you're also opening them up for providing good feedback or bad feedback, right? Bad feedback is as good as good feedback. The difference with good feedback is that you publish, right? And bad feedback, you work on it, right? So these are the two paths, but that's exactly what you described.
Okay, another question. Sorry. What? So can you use reinvent your revolution as an example on this process, because you're talking about how you start gathering this information without having first the customer journey. So you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. Well, you have to act a little crazy, especially when you're kind of doing what I'm trying to do, right? So the first thing that I did was essentially I started going into different forums, different groups, and I spent a lot of time understanding what people were posting, what people uh, were talking about. Okay, so just I got a message here from Rene that you're not being able to ask to listen to what Francis said. So what he said is, if I could relate to the journey that Reinvention Revolution had when we first started. Is that correct, Francis?
Yes.
Okay. So what I did was I started going into multiple places, right? I think the first big one for me was the Knowledge Brokers group, right? Because there was a lot of people there that saw the writing on the wall. We neither one of us knew exactly how to help people in that. And then when Tony and Dean started this, and it exploded, right? It's more than 40,000 knowledge brokers globally today. Started with 62 in May last year, right? And we were like, okay, what are the questions that people will have when they're turning their own knowledge into something for themselves? I mean, people have been doing courses on the internet for a long time, but that was not what this was all about, right? It was about creating a framework, creating the gold standard. But then the question was, who would be willing to pay for that? So I had to go in and do a lot of assessment, a lot of testing with the messages, see what gets clicked, what it doesn't get clicked, how do we ensure that what is getting clicked is the message that aligns to the people. So if you see my social profiles, right, you're going to see that there's a lot of news that I post in it. And what I do with that is I check the interest, right? Who's viewing it? Who is clicking on it? What are they talking about? Because that's a way for me to connect with them, right? They may be a customer, they may not be a customer. In the end, it doesn't matter. But if they like the message, then it helps me frame it adequately for the group that I want, and then that group starts growing. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, good. So anybody else? Any other questions? No? All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to send you guys these forms within the next couple of hours. Please answer them. It's going to be super helpful for us to start kind of reinventing this Theo sessions as we go, right? We want to invite more people. We want to have more engagement. So if you want to invite more people, please feel free to share the invitation link. And if you have questions about how you do it, just send me an email, LinkedIn, WhatsApp, whatever, right? And what we want is to bring content that is valuable for you. These contents are being made available as a follow-up to the events as well. So it's gonna make it easier for you also to share. If you see that something is relevant for someone you work with, for a colleague, someone in your family, and so on, we want you to share that. All right. So thank you very much for joining us today. It was a great pleasure. Please, if you like, tell me by clapping your hands. And if you didn't, you can do this as well, in case you didn't. All right, guys, thank you so much. It's appreciated. I hope to see you again next week. We're preparing a lot more fun things for you to do. And love you all. Have a great weekend when you come to it, all right? Cheers. Bye-bye.